and welcome to another episode of Performance Anxiety. I am your host, Joan Elizabeth, here with my lovely co-host, Lisa Anderson. And we are very excited because we have a very special guest today. He is the creator and director of the Victorian horror troupe Phantasmagoria, and they are in their 14th year running in the Central Florida area. Please help us welcome John Dodonna.
Hello.
Welcome, John.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Yes. And your busy schedule. You just got done with rehearsal.
I did. I literally, and that was a rehearsal actually for Peter and the Starcatcher, which I'm also directing right now. So I literally walked out of that, came home, and turned on Zoom.
And where is that? Where is that going to be?
Yeah.
So I teach at Valencia College. I'm the program chair of theater there. So we just closed Angels in America Part 2, and now we're in rehearsals for Peter and the Starcatcher, and that will be opening the same days we open Phantasmagoria at MegaCon. So,
Well, you're not busy at all, are you?
So in that time, you're learning to clone yourself as well, right? So you can be in two places at once. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's wonderful.
That's a beautiful show, too. I love that show.
Yeah.
fun. And it's very much like what we do with Phantasmagoria. It's a storytelling show. In fact, a lot of my Phantasmagoria colleagues are collaborating on it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read the book, but I never have actually seen the live show.
Oh, you haven't?
Yeah,
Oh,
so I may have
beautiful.
to see if I can get to that one.
Yeah, it's kooky. It's kooky.
Yeah.
So, John, tell us how you got Phantasmagoria started and all of that good stuff.
If you can remember that far back, right?
So first of all, you are getting the only interview ever done about Phantasmagoria without me dressed like Byron. So this is the only time anybody has ever interviewed John. I didn't know what the focus was going to be, or I would have had the whole outfit on. So Byron is not here right now, but John is. So Phantasmagoria started as a one-show deal. We were going to do one show. I was up in Atlanta. I got this inspiration from a puppet show that I had seen, actually. It was a Faulkner novel that they were doing, As I Lay Dying, I think it was. And they did it with puppets and multimedia and all this stuff. And I went, that's my answer. Because for years I had wanted a horror circus, but I never knew what that meant. I had these ideas, and then I'd pull back. I'd have another idea. I would pull back. And so I wrote the first Phantasmagoria while I was in Atlanta and cast it down.
Is that where you were living at the time?
No, I was teaching. So I used to go up, before I became program chair at Valencia, I would go up every summer and teach up in Atlanta.
Okay, gotcha.
I spend the summer there, basically. So I wrote it, I cast it from up there. There were no auditions. I just cast people I really wanted to work with, people who I had been working with for year upon year. And I came back and we sort of started, devising and creating what this Phantasmagoria thing was going to be. We opened at the Orlando Shakes and we were selling out the shows. And by about midway through the run, people were saying, what are you going to do next? What's next year for Phantasmagoria? And I was like, there is no next year. What are you talking about? So closing night, we all did a nice big circle, the entire cast. And I said, hey, do you all want to do this again? And they all said, yes. And I said, okay, but if we do it again, it's got to be completely different. We can't do the same show every year. So I'm going to have to write a new show every year. And they all agreed. So for the most part, other than some people who had moved away, the entire cast came back for the second year.
Wow.
And we did it, and it was even bigger, and it was also a success. And then all the weird stuff started happening. So we started getting invited to do events, and we didn't know what that meant. And we would go to a comic book show, small ones at first. We would go to a comic book show, and we'd be there just not knowing what to do. Just like we're going to be here and we're going to look wonderful and host people. And people would come up to us and go, oh, you're Byron and you're Isabella. And we're going, it was weird. It was kind of spooky. So people started knowing who we were. And that skyrocketed. There was a point in time in those first couple of years, first 3 or 4, we only did a Halloween show. And then we would do scattered events throughout the year. That built to us doing sometimes, like pre-pandemic, we were doing about 100 events a year, plus 3 tours, so it exploded. So it went from a 1 month, event to 12 months out of the year. We're together, we're rehearsing, we're creating new shows, we're doing appearances and events and tours. So it's gotten kind of crazy, but we have a good team. that supports it. So,
and you juggle this with full-time job as well?
We all do. Yeah. Every single one of us does different things. So we have in the main troupe down here, we have probably now acting wise, about 35 to 40 active members who perform with us on and off. And then, of course, we have a stage management crew and designers and people who we bring in as guests to do things. So it's a pretty large contingent of people. And everybody has different jobs, whether they are teachers. So we have teachers in high school, or whether they are professionals out there working in the field in theater, or one of our people helps manage a comic book shop. We have all different careers around us. And then this is what we do as our second profession, because I can't say it's a hobby. It's not. Now it's kind of our second profession.
Not 100 events a year.
No, that becomes something else, right?
Yeah.
And that is where we are now doing that. So that's kind of how we started. Kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah. So is your main area Orlando? Because I know you guys travel up here to Ocala, but how far do you guys go?
Yeah. So we are based in or the Orlando area. I actually live, I'm talking to you from a haunted house in Sanford right now.
Okay.
And so I live in Sanford, and we rehearse in a wonderful dance studio we've been at since the beginning, actually, down in Winter Park. So we are Central Florida based, and we perform in Orlando, Tampa, DeLand, Lake County, various places, Ocala. We've gone as far north as Baltimore, Maryland, where we've gone on tour.
Wow.
We had a troupe for a while in Atlanta, Georgia. Pandemic hit. We had a troupe in Atlanta, Georgia. We had a troupe in St. Louis, Missouri for 2 years, working on riverboats.
That's cool.
The latest,
it's really cool.
Yeah, it's fun up. We loved being up there. The person we were working with is no longer at the riverboats, so we're not doing shows there at this time. And then this year we're moving it all the way to Syracuse, New York. So we're going to be doing an appearance in Syracuse, as well as there's a theater in Syracuse that's leasing one of our plays to do up there. So so we're kind of like spreading out.
Yes, that's amazing. Can you kind of give a verbal picture of exactly what you guys do? I mean, we'll definitely link to any social media that you guys have.
Sure. It's hard. We call it a tapestry. We say that we're weaving a tapestry, of fantastical dance, ghostly storytelling, things like that. We do, so for events, we are very circus-like. So for events, we'll come with our sword swallower or our fire dancers and breathers and belly dancers, things like that, So we're
kind
much
of create
more
atmosphere and
yeah. So we're much more circus oriented when we do those kinds of things. When we do the mini tours, or like the shows that were on the riverboats, or our main stage shows, they are heavily storytelling based, mixed with dance. So each year we get these wonderful awards as, one of the top 3 dance troupes in Central Florida, which is really neat because that's not essentially what we started as, but we're recognized as a dance troupe because of some wonderful dancers that we have. So, if you see a main stage show, you'll see a mix of some incredible projections that are done by our projection designers, like walking into a virtual reality world so the dreams come alive behind us. And we'll be doing a selection of horror tales that go back sometimes to the Bible and forward till about the late 1800s. We kind of cap off there, right? We don't move into the 20th century too much to keep that Victorian kind of feel that we have.
Yeah.
And so it would be like, depending on which show it is, it would be a story leading to a dance or a dance leading into a story. And we mix the two of them together. So the dance becomes the extension of the story, or vice versa. We are called by the dance and it becomes a story that we tell. And there's a mythology that we created around it because we needed some kind of a framework. We needed to figure out who we are.
Sure.
And so there's a mythology about that. These are the storytellers from ancient Greece who have come down through time.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're not supernatural. They're other natural, I guess is a better way of saying it, because they don't die, because they can't die, because if they die, the stories die.
Right.
So they carry the stories with them. They're called whenever a story is needed to be told. So that's this loose mythology we built up. And we have little like mini histories of where we were at a certain time or how things happened that we create for ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes we slip into the shows. We used to do that a lot more than we do now. Once we started touring, which was in I think year 6, it became harder because all of a sudden you're meeting audiences that have no idea who you are.
Yeah.
And so you can't all of a sudden be referencing this existing mythology to people who don't know it at all, you know?
Right.
So while we still keep it going for ourselves, it's less in our shows than it used to be, you know?
Okay.
So that's what you would see. Depending on where we are, sometimes we add aerial. So we have some wonderful aerial artists who do it, live music, live singing. It depends on the show, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what so it's like I call it a variety show sometimes just because it's hard to understand what all of that is,
Yeah.
but it's the seamless mix together of things, you know? So for like the Valentine's Day show, which we toured with last year, not this year, but last year, it was a mini tour, 7 performers. We had about 5 different stories being told, multiple dances that were being done, a cabaret singer who sang songs, and it all just kind of blends together into one evening. And that is the best I can describe. We call ourselves whimsically macabre, you know, and we are. We
Yeah,
will
and
always be horror filled. Yeah, but we'll
Yeah.
never be bloody or gross. That's not what we do. We do
No.
Edgar Allan Poe. We do elegance, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that description that you used earlier, that it's a tapestry, because I've seen several of your productions, and it is hard to explain. If somebody asked me what Phantasmagoria is, I'd say, well, they're kind of a horror-esque troupe, but they're not. You just have to see it for yourself.
Yeah, no,
because
I
it's
did the
so-
same thing even this evening because our producer Josh, who's sitting in the background there, he hasn't seen one of your shows yet, and so I was trying to describe it like,
and-
next time they're at the Riley, you have to see it.
Yeah.
Because it's like this circusy, Victorian-y, steampunky thing.
Because it's so eclectic and esoteric and unique, and everything you guys do is it's just its own thing, and
Yeah.
it's just so rich.
It
and
is.
wonderful.
It's built on itself, you know, and that's not all me. That's everybody who joins.
No,
it.
sure,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
that's all. Each person who joins the troupe brings a new element. You know,
Yeah.
I was never going to sit there and write something for a sword swallower, and all of a sudden, a sword swallower came to us.
And you're like,
They were
Well, we gotta-
performers with us all the time.
we gotta
Or-
write it in, yeah.
Or fire. You know, we're known
Yeah.
for fire dancing. I didn't invent that. Somebody joined the troupe who was a fire dancer and then introduced it. At one point in time, we had, I think, 12 trained fire dancers in the troupe.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
Wow.
So, you know, so we teach our people like that. We just did that the other day. So we constantly train together, even when we're not rehearsing.
Okay.
So last week they had a big fire workshop here at the house. We have a huge backyard. Everybody came over to learn the basics of fire dancing, basics of fire safety. You know, that has to be taught first.
Yes.
And then we escalate teaching them how to dance with the fire, you know? So it's a great learning experience for all of us because we learn things we never felt comfortable with before, you know?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great way to expand your talents as well.
Absolutely.
So did you ever think you'd be going for 14 years?
No.
I thought you'd do the one show and it would be a
No,
one-off,
yeah.
and that would be it.
And every time I think, well, we have to end it, there's no end. It's like, oh, here's a great, you know, we're booked through next summer with
Wow.
events and things that we're
Wow.
doing. You
So
know?
awesome.
And we forged great collaborations. Like a number of years ago, 5 now, I guess, we forged a collaboration with Opera Orlando, where they wanted us to come in and actually create. They were doing Pagliacci and Punchinella, and they wanted us to create all of Punchinella. Like, that's you. It's not a ballet anymore. It's Phantasmagoria. So whatever that's going to be, it's you. So we got to create this, 30-minute section of an entire opera that was just us, working with the opera singers, blending them into us, which was great.
That's amazing.
And then the next year we did Girl of the Golden West with them, which they collaborated with us again, and we got to be Phantasmagoria in the Old West. That was interesting because we stayed who we were, but we just moved it to the Old West. It worked,
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we're at the very start of, we just finished budgeting and design. Opera Orlando has us coming in to do a whole opera. We're doing Juniper Tree with them, where it's
Really?
I'm directing it and I'm styling the whole thing. And Michel Puppets is building 9-foot-high puppets for it. And the opera singers will be coming in and we'll be doing Juniper Tree, which is a Philip Glass opera that we're collaborating on.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's amazing. When is
Beautiful.
that going to be?
That's going to be, I think they're scheduling it for May or April or May of 2024. So like I'm saying,
Okay.
we're already in the planning stages for things we're doing then.
That's
is
amazing.
awesome.
So so there is no end. I guess, it's kind of like the troupe itself. As long as there's stories to be told, we're going to keep doing it,
Yeah.
And that's, MegaCon. This is our third year doing MegaCon the way we are right now, but I think it's our sixth year doing MegaCon in general. And we create a whole, half-hour mini performances for MegaCon. It's a paid event, it's a ticketed event that people, and we sell out, 10 of them over the
MegaCon
weekend.
is huge.
Wow.
So it's a wonderful experience for us to do it. So, we performed on trains. We performed on riverboats, like I said.
Yeah.
We performed in Tampa on pirate taxis for 80 people, where we did shows on pirate taxis.
Oh my gosh.
We have fun doing all different kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice.
That's
Very
really
nice.
cool. How did you get into directing?
So you noticed that I'm smirking. I feel like I tell people that basically I have surfed through this my entire life. Like an opportunity opened and I would just kind of go in and say, hey, let me try this. Let me see. Hey, this is cool. Will this be interesting? So I was at, never had any intention of directing. I was at college, undergrad. And I was working with a volunteer organization at the school that was that did shows. They had like a $40,000 a year budget, and they were doing shows.
Were you an actor at that time?
No, at that point in time, I just got involved as a volunteer, right?
Oh, okay.
So funny thing, I was just working backstage on, I think, one show, and I got along really well with the board of directors. Well, it seems that the board of directors who was leaving hated the probable board of directors coming in.
Oh.
So when they did their elections for the new board, they voted me as president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary.
Oh. Oh my gosh.
So all of a sudden, I had no idea what I was doing, and I was given a theater troupe. And the woman at the school who was in charge of it, their advisor, said, don't worry, I'll take you under my wing and we will figure this out together. So that's how I started directing. It's like I came back the next year and went, oh, I guess I have to direct something.
Oh
so
my gosh.
I learned how to direct,
How old were you about at that time?
18.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I went to
Oh my
college at
gosh.
17. By my sophomore year, when I turned 18, I was doing this. Yeah, actually, so I turned 18 in my while I was there in my freshman year. So by the time I was given this organization to run, I was still 18. When I came back, by the time I directed my first show, I was 19.
Okay.
Goodness gracious.
But I respect it and I love it. And teaching is the same thing. I never thought I'd ever teach, and I kind of fell into that to help out a friend who needed somebody to teach some courses. And it's kind of like each element of it. I've surfed. I surfed into something and I loved it. There's obviously been things that I've surfed right out of, but for the most part, I've enjoyed it. So yeah, so I started directing then. I dropped out of the art program because I wasn't even a theater major. I was an art major.
Okay.
I dropped out and started taking theater, but I was taking theater management because I said, well, I got to figure out how to do this, right?
Yeah.
So I became a theater management major.
I've got to figure out how to be an entire board of directors, for a theater company.
And then I eventually, I went to grad school, and then really, so I was doing it for years before I learned what I was doing. So it was actually a good experience because I was learning by failing and, making mistakes and fixing them and learning that way. And then when eventually I finally took the classes, I could look back at what I was doing and go, that's what that was. Oh, that's a thing. I didn't know that was a theory or a thing, and I was kind of doing it. So the education helped to solidify and clarify what I was doing, and of course, teach me new things,
Yeah.
So I really loved the idea of doing before I knew, and then kind of blending in the education. It really was just wonderful. It was a great experience. And then eventually I came to Florida. I was working on Swamp Thing and Superforce and all the shows. I was doing special effects. I was a special effects makeup artist. That's a whole other story. So I was
That's
doing
very
that
cool.
stuff.
We might have to bunny trail back to that.
Yeah. We'll put a pin in that and come back to it a little bit later.
Yeah.
So
And that's what got me down here. And then after about 2 years, Hollywood East dried up, as we all know.
Yeah.
There was nothing really being done down here. And that's when I started working for production houses. So I was, designing sets and draperies and all kinds of stuff that we were doing, and moved into doing live stage down here. I had been doing it, all along up to here, but I was brought here for film and TV.
Okay.
and then started doing the live stage. And from that point on, it's just continued,
Yeah.
as we go.
When did you start teaching?
Probably my first time teaching was around 1994, I'm going to guess. And I hated it. I wasn't ready yet. I did it
Yeah.
for about 3 years and then didn't go back. It was good. It was pleasant. It just was not for me.
Yeah.
And then it was until years later that a friend said, "Hey, I'd like you to teach a course." And I said, "I don't want to." And they said, "I need you one semester. And I said, "Okay." And I went back and I actually enjoyed it now. It's like I was ready for it,
Yes.
In grad school, without getting too serious here, in grad school, they kind of are coaching you to walk right out of grad school and go teach. And it's like, what life experience do you have? What experience in your field do you have? You don't. So that's probably why the first time I was teaching, I felt like I was drowning, because I was just newly out of grad school. And I didn't have enough experience under my belt. I could teach acting. I enjoyed teaching the acting more than the history. And, I was teaching religion too. Figure that one out. I just wasn't ready, as a person or as a professional to teach. By the time I went back, I had the skills I needed and kind of the yearning for it. So, and that, again, surfing, surfed in, surfed out, surfed back in and enjoyed it the second time.
Well, I think we need to go back to that, the makeup and all that kind of stuff and effects and
Okay.
come on, let's dive in. You brought it up.
So you surfed into that.
Yeah.
It's the whole horror thing, right? I've loved horror since I was a child.
Would you say you're most inspired by horror?
Two things that I realize actually have both influenced Phantasmagoria were horror movies like the old Hammer horror movies. And of course, the Universal horror movies, those kinds of things. Not so much the stuff that, was out when I was younger, like the gore movies, and the splatter films, not those things, but the old Hammer horror films and the Universal horror films and the Beatles. Now, that may sound crazy to you. It's like, how does those two things combine? The Beatles are the whimsical nature.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it myself personally until about year 5. We were hosting an event at Renegers. So we've hosted the steampunk days at Renegers since it started, and we were hosting it. And there was a singer there who's still a dear friend who we still perform with. His name is John Babcock. And he is a Paul McCartney impersonator. He used to perform with Beatlemania.
Really?
So he was playing, and he came up to me and said, "Hey, do you think could you dance and stuff when I'm, playing and all this?" I'm like, yeah. And I was in awe. I mean, he will, if people ask him, he will tell you, yeah, he kind of, I was his idol that day, that kind of thing. And so I, went to my people and I said, "Okay, we're going to dance." And like, "What are we going to do?" And I'm like, "I have no idea, but let's have fun." Think Edwardian, picnic, which was very Beatles-esque. And I didn't realize it when I was saying it out loud.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's playing Penny Lane and all the dancers are out there with parasols dancing with everybody and stuff. And I'm going, "Oh my God, that's the whimsical nature of Phantasmagoria. It's the Beatles."
Yeah.
And I never realized it, And so those are the two influences, but back to the horror movies and back to the makeup.
Yes.
So I did like everybody did and started pouring latex on people's faces and doing, really bizarre stuff and having fun doing it. And I guess I was good because a couple of small films, like student films, found me from, somebody said, "Hey, John, he's crazy. He'll do it," that kind of stuff. And so I started doing a couple of student films. And from there, I was recommended for a film that was being done by NYU. So all of a sudden I'm flying down to New York to do makeup effects for a film at NYU.
Wow.
I go back up and there's this guy, Paige Martin, and he runs a big special effects studio. And he says, "Hey, I heard that you do special effects. I'm looking for an assistant. Are you interested?" And I went, "Yes." So he gave me a test. He said, "I need you to create this and this and this tonight and bring it to the studio tomorrow." So I stayed up all night and did all these sculptures and all this stuff and went to the studio. And he said, "You're good. You have a lot to learn, but you're good. And I'd like to hire you as my assistant." And so I did. I worked with Paige for 4 years at Paige Martin Productions and Multi Effects Productions up in New York. And we did, theme park stuff, and we did haunted hay rides where we created animatronics, and we did haunted houses and makeup for like horror makeup for commercials, like or promotionals. We did like a Freddy Krueger when one of the Freddy movies opened up, and we did the makeups for it, and we did promotionals for Critters. So my claim to fame is that a critter I created, which was this huge costume, right?
Yeah.
Critter I created was on the cover of like the Weekly World Globe with a
Oh,
title
nice.
that said "Critter-like monster ate my baby girl." And that's like my favorite thing ever.
Do you have any kind of like remnants of that or any kind of image of it or?
Well, but if you look behind me on the top shelf, you actually will see some stuff, and you will see an animatronic. That was an animatronic turkey at one point.
Oh my gosh.
The skeleton, you will see the eyeballs, and that was
Oh my
an
God.
animatronic turkey. Is the insides of him because he decayed long ago.
Oh man.
So we did that. So for 4 years, then I went to grad school.
Yeah.
And then, so I gave all that up. I went to grad school. I'm learning how to, this MFA in acting and directing, and I'm learning all this stuff. And then in my last year of grad school, who calls me but Paige Martin? And he says, "Hey, I'm moving down to Florida. You want to come to Florida? I need a shop foreman and an assistant, and you're the guy." And I said, "Okay." So I started the drive down to Jacksonville, and literally was on the road and had stopped at a gas station and used the payphone because that's what we use. Called him and he went, "Oh, yeah, shit. I forgot to tell you. I moved to Orlando. I'm not in Jacksonville anymore.
Oh,
Come to
God.
Orlando." And I went, "What?"
What?
Well, at least he didn't say Miami.
So I continued to Orlando. I walked in the door. He said, "Good." He said, "Come on, get in the car." Immediately, I'm going to Universal Studios, which still was not open. And
wow.
and he's walking me around, introducing me and saying, "These are the shows we're working on, John." I'm like, "What the?" I had no idea what I was getting myself into,
Oh
but
my
it was
God.
great. And Paige, years ago, he once said to me, it was really, he has passed away since. He was a very dear friend. He has passed away since. And at one point in time, we were working on a big convention. Even years later, he would come back from California. He had moved to California after being down here, and he would still hire me to do things. And he was down here doing a show with me, and we were going for a walk, and he went, "I just want you to know I feel really bad about stuff." And I said, "Excuse me?" He said, "There's so many things I did wrong over the years together, And I said, "Paige, I know when you were doing things wrong. And that taught me not to do it that way." And I said, "And honestly, that's the best lesson I could have ever learned. So don't you ever regret anything you ever taught me,
Wow.
And it's true. He did do things wrong. And I would watch and I would say, "I'm not going to do it like that. I'm going to do it like this instead,
Mhm.
So what a great benefit and what a great friend,
Yeah.
He eventually, I'm not going down this wormhole. He eventually wrote a book that was on like the New York Times best books to read on the beach or something like that. And it was kind of this national treasure murder mystery about him and me and a bunch of people who worked in the shop in Syracuse. And it's actually a really good book. And then he was writing the sequel when he died. So I have no idea what happens. All I know is that at the end of the other book, I was shot in the lake. So
Oh gosh, John.
yeah, I don't know what happens to me now. And I
So
never will know.
You're a character that was killed off in a novel. How cool is that?
That's
Who knows?
Dude.
Paige was, so that's why I said I'm not going to go down that wormhole. But
Sure, yeah.
and he never told me. He just sent me this book and said, "Read it."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
And I started reading it, and I was bored at first, going, "I don't understand. Why am I reading this?" And all of a sudden, I came to the time that he met me, and I was going, "What?" I'm going,
Yeah.
"Wait a minute." And I kept reading, and I kept going, "Wait a minute, that's me. And this is Paige. And this is so, and I started making the connections, and it was just really weird.
Oh,
I can imagine. That's very surreal.
Yeah.
He was an interesting guy. He worked for Disney. His parent was one of the first people in the nation in the late 60s to be an official person who transitioned
Okay.
Wow.
from one gender to another. And, gender reaffirming surgery is what we call it now. Back then, there was
Yeah.
another name for it,
Yeah.
And so I got to work with Ms. Martin. That's who that was, his parent. And so I learned a lot from them too. They were a famous artist. So it's like, again, surfing, right? Who would know I'd meet this guy and I would know him for at least a third of my life until he passed away, You never think of those
Amazing.
things. And it's just
Yeah,
kind of fun.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Talk about a bunny trail and
Yeah.
surfing in a bunny trail. I love it.
Yes, yes. Oh my gosh. So you guys are booked out until 2014. You've got some big projects coming. What are some of the shows, style of shows that you're working on now? As far as the themes and stuff?
Well, right now we're doing MegaCon, which is a teaser show called Tales of the Undead, because that is our fall tour. So MegaCon is always the tease for our fall tour.
Okay.
So we're doing that right now. Then come around end of July, I'll be finishing the script for Tales of the Undead. As I'm researching and seeing what stories we want to do and how I want to incorporate them and adapt them, and interpret them. And then our composer will start working on music in the middle of the summer, because it's all original music now that we do in our shows. His name is
cool.
Josh Solomon, and he usually, so the music in our shows is either created by us, or for us, I should say, by a composer, or music that an artist has given us permission to use. That's all we will do. We have to have permission for everything we use in our shows. About a couple of years ago, Josh Solomon, who's one of our actors as well, Percival, started writing little songs for us. And last year was the first year I said, I want you to write the entire soundtrack. And he did, and it was wonderful. 5 waltzes and dances and, little music throughout the stories and stuff that he created, which was just tremendous. And we're doing that. We're following up with that again this year as we go. So he'll start composing the music. I want everything to have a New Orleans flair this year. So this Tales of the Undead New Orleans funeral flair is where we're going with it. So we'll start rehearsing that in August, late August, for opening in October. Actually, hopefully, we're coming back to Ocala, and I've offered them the weekend. Our actual opening weekend would be in Ocala this year.
Ooh, nice.
And then we're already booked in Lake County at a new theater for main stage shows. We've done smaller events there. It's Melon Patch. And then we'll also be performing in DeLand, and also in Tampa, and also in Orlando. So moving those, and then we want to add Ocala to the list, of course. And then we're creating a whole new Christmas show. So we did, one year we just said, let's do something for Christmas, So we decided to do our own adaptation of Christmas Carol. And at the time that we did it, there was no other Christmas carols being done that year in town in Orlando. So we're like, great. Yeah. This past year, there was 11.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So we don't want to do, we did Christmas Carol and Canterville Ghost mixed together this past year. And this year we're going back and revisiting a mini tour we did, which was very successful, called Through a Christmas Darkly. Ooh. In fact, we did it in Ocala. The Christmas parade ended at the Riley, and we performed Through a Christmas Darkly there.
Very cool.
So it's a selection of like Victorian ghost stories wrapped around Christmas, because there's a lot, because the tradition was telling ghost stories at Christmas.
Okay.
So we're going to do Canterville Ghost again. We're going to do another Dickens, because Dickens actually has multiple ghost stories of Christmas, not just one. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to blend in some of these other stories and make it a full 90-minute show rather than the hour-long show that Through a Christmas Darkly was previously.
Okay.
So that will be our Christmas tour. At the same time, a theater up in Syracuse has asked to lease our Christmas Carol and Canterville Ghost in Syracuse. So I'll be going back and forth to play with them. Their version of the show. It won't be Phantasmagoria, but it will be what I call Phantasmagoria adjacent, like in the style of Phantasmagoria.
Sure.
And then we're also right now picking dates for a small contingent, 7 or 8 people, to go up to Syracuse prior to that and do kind of a Halloween show up there. So staying busy, as you can see.
Clearly.
And then that whole time we're also prepping, of course, for the opera, because that's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's going to take, I get the singers and the orchestra for only about 2 weeks, with them. So we have to rehearse about 4 weeks prior to that, working with the dance, because Philip Glass it's difficult, to dance to Philip Glass. So we're actually finding triggers in the music to do that, and work with the puppeteers and learn the puppets and the whole thing. So by the time the opera singers come in, we move together smoothly and are able to open the show. That's going to be at the Dr. Phillips Center for Performing Arts that we're doing.
Okay.
That plus all the events, the events we do on a regular basis. We'll see if we do the boats out in Tampa again this year. I don't know yet. We'll find out soon. I'll try to have a meeting with them. We do special events for places like the Tampa Theater. So we do our main stage there, but we also do special events there. So those are what start piling up over the summer. Our busy season is September, October, November, December. Okay. That is our busiest 4 months out of the year. When we're constantly working, so.
Good weather to do that in. Hey, do you guys ever sell any of your original soundtracks?
We've talked about it. And so now that we have Josh, we have a mix of songs from like Todd Kimbrough. He's written a lot for us. Les Caulfield's written a lot for us. Lauren Graber, who is an opera singer. She's our opera singer because we have our own. We met in the opera and now she's joined Phantasmagoria. So she's written a number of songs for us. So we have talked about it. I think the first step for that is one of our performers, Arcana, who's been with us for many years now, has come up with this idea that she'd like to do a Women of Phantasmagoria cabaret, because we have so many singers of so many different styles that it'd be a lot of fun to do. So I'm an advocate of that very much.
Yes.
So so we'll see when that happens, whether it's this year or early next year, we'll see. And then so that might follow something like that,
Okay.
Our cabaret singer, Momo Lin, has recently started writing her own songs rather than just doing older songs from New Orleans. She has started creating her own because she is from New Orleans, supposedly this character. And so she has started creating her own. They're hopefully premiering her first one at MegaCon. Her and Josh are working together to create the music for it. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that. Everybody keeps asking us, do you have T-shirts? Do you have mugs? Do you have calendars? And it's like, we don't have time. We would love to. We would love to.
Yeah,
It's a little hard to juggle all of that with a full-time job too.
Yeah, I was wondering on the subject of being busy, and I mean, you seem to really take such joy and have such passion for everything that you do. But that being said, is there any particular aspect of it all that you find particularly challenging? Is there
Not challenging, but scary.
Okay.
We all work on a profit sharing basis, and it's good. Everybody gets paid. There's not one person that works for us that does not get paid.
Nice.
From the one-day stagehand to the person who is in all the shows and all the rehearsals, everybody gets
Wonderful
paid.
that you can do that.
And it's scary sometimes because as a producer, I watch the books hoping and making sure that the people could be paid their worth.
Oh,
Yeah.
mhm.
And so that's scary, and it always works out. Thank God, but it's just scary watching that and making sure that people could be kept happy that way. They don't ask for it, but to keep them happy in that way, I think that's important to do. So that's scary. And then just, we are a sole producership. We're not a theater. We're not a nonprofit. So I have to do all of our taxes and all of our stuff and all of the 1099s and all of this and all of that. And
All the unsexy stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the stuff that stresses me out the most, because literally my wife, Cimarine, she plays Cimarine in the show. We sit there, and what would probably take an accountant, 3 hours to do, we take 3 weeks to do, because we want to be perfect with everything. And we double and triple and quadruple check our numbers. And we contact everybody and go, I know that for the last 5 years, your address was this and your social security was always this, but we want to check again, and because we just want to make sure that we never screw anything up for somebody, because it's money. So I think that's the only thing that is daunting. The exhaustion, that's something else. That's something you'll get past, But wanting to be true to people and be able to treat them in the way they deserve to be treated, and to be diligent, because when I'm working those finances, it's not my finances, it's everybody's finances because of our model. Again, the Beatles, that actually was mentioned in our second year, that our model is called Western communism, meaning the Beatles said that Apple was Western communism, that everybody was supposed to share in it. Now, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
But when they started Apple and the Apple Boutique, they said everybody's going to share. And what happened was that artists would come in and, go to John Lennon, hey, I want to create this sculpture. And Lennon was like, sure, here's some money, take it, and they were throwing money away without realizing that's what they were doing, because they were not good businessmen. Brian had died. And so, but that concept of Western communism that I think Paul coined it, it was like an interview once. I love that idea that we are capitalist, but everybody shares. My share is equal to your share, and your share is equal, that kind of a thing. And yes, people do accrue stuff. So like our choreographer makes, more than one share for the work that she does, because it's hard, and people also accrue shares over the years. So if you're with us in 1 year, you're going to get a share. If you're with us for multiple years, it's going to add up, because there's the commitment. We have people with us who have been with us for 14 years.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And That's incredible, and then we have people, we do have recent, we very rarely hold auditions, but we recently held auditions. We added about 5 or 6 people to the troupe, which was great. So now they've been with
Wow.
us 1 year, person longevity adds to what we try to give them back,
Yeah.
and I think that's the way you keep people involved. There are people who left the troupe for, family, moving away, jobs. We still keep in touch. It's still a family. And that's how we keep people, we treat them with respect. They treat us with respect. So wrapping back around, that's always the most tension-filled thing.
Yeah.
And if anybody's going to not get paid, it's going to be myself. If it's the difference between me getting a share and you getting another $50 to bring you up to $600, you're going to get that share, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, that's the only thing that gives me anxiety. Like, I think most business owners think about it. That's every single person who does business with other people. They're
Yes.
worried about the finances and the bottom line and all that stuff. Artistically, I have no worries. I trust all these people implicitly.
That's amazing.
And that's why I said it's not just me. I couldn't do it if it was just me. It's all of us together. That's what makes Phantasmagoria.
Yeah, and being able to have artists that you can delegate to that way and trust to do their craft and to do it well. That's just an amazing gift.
Such an amazing gift.
Absolutely. Bill, who's our stage combat guy, I think we've just celebrated. He talks about it like a marriage. And I think we've just celebrated like our 22nd anniversary working together, all told,
cool.
not just Phantasmagoria, but in all those years. And he's my stage combat director for Peter and the Starcatcher, or then you have somebody like Gina Makhrova, who started with us as Pandora. I met Gina when she was 9. She started in Phantasmagoria when she was 12. She's now 25, turning 26. She's my wig and makeup designer for Peter and the Starcatcher.
So
that's
cool.
amazing.
So that's, these just wonderful ways that the family stays together and continues to work together is really nice.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Well, John, where can everybody find out more information about Phantasmagoria?
We do have a website. Now, the website is show specific. So we only update it for here's MegaCon. And then in the fall, here's our fall show, but that's phantasmagoriaorlando.com. That's what that is. The best way to find us is actually the thing that's updated all the time is our Facebook page. We have a really nice following on Facebook. We try to keep in touch with all the people on there. And so that's, www.facebook.com/Phantasmagoria Orlando. That is the best way. There's a couple of Phantasmagorias out there. So make sure you find us. There's actually kind of a very, very dirty, sexy burlesque troupe in Chicago that we get confused for sometimes. And it's like, no, that's not us. They're great for what they do, but that's not.
Yeah. Support them too, but we're not them.
Yeah.
There's a band in Europe, I think Czechoslovakia or something called Phantasmagoria. That's a heavy metal band.
There is.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they always tag us. So it's like, you're not performing at that festival in Yugoslavia. That's not us.
And how did you know that, Joe?
I have friends who are into death metal and yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
We love that we all share because the name is, we tried copywriting it for what we do. And the lawyer said, it's a name that's existed for 400 years. You can't copyright it,
Yeah.
And he's right. It's a name that means a ghost show, basically.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've heard it. I've heard the word used just to describe what you said. So
yeah, ghost shows. It started in the late 1700s. Where they were actually performing ghost shows, and they would use rudimentary lanterns to project ghosts on the walls, and people would think they were real. And there was a lawsuit because they thought they actually raised from the dead this politician, and of course they didn't. The book that Byron and Shelley were to kind of bring us back to Phantasmagoria's roots, and my character Byron and Shelley were reading from a book called Phantasmagoriana. That night when they all said, let's write a ghost story. There is a German book of ghost stories. So the name is centuries old. There's a video game named it. Lewis Carroll wrote a poem called Phantasmagoria about a little silly ghost. So it's a name. Yeah, it's an all-purpose name.
if you tweaked the spelling just a little bit, then could you copyright it?
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. It's like there's no reason to because it's who we are.
Sure. Yeah.
And there was actually at a time when, we were working with this lawyer and this trademark lawyer who felt the same thing. The trademark lawyer was like, you don't need to.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that because at the time, HBO was creating a TV series, which actually is on. It's called Phantasmagoria with an F, or Phantasmagorias. It's a Spanish speaking or a South American horror show. It never went anywhere. And he literally came to me and said, they're doing this thing. And here's the interesting thing. They announced this and started filing for it about a year ago. You started and were in the public eye in newspapers 10 years ago. So you can actually sue them if you want. And I said, no. Why would I do that? I said, first of all, it's spelled differently. Second, I don't have $2 million to sue HBO.
I know, right?
Yeah. So no, I feel really comfortable just having this wonderful historical name with us,
Yeah.
And some people say to me, the biggest one that people say to me, hey, are you guys that video game? No, we're not a video game.
Are you the death metal band from?
Cool that you know that.
Forever.
And we're definitely not the very dirty X-rated burlesque show. That's and I've seen pictures of them. They're fabulous. They're very sexual. They're not what we do, but they're fabulous.
But you guys have some very sexy elements to your show as well.
Well, we have sexy and sensual. We don't go to sexual. There's a big difference.
Right.
Between them, you know what I mean?
Yes,
we are
absolutely.
we're the Hammer Horror. That's why I
Yeah.
always reference Hammer Horror. We're the heaving bosom Victoriana,
Yes.
We're that kind of a thing rather than we're the elegant sexiness, sensuality without ever, we've never even really had a kiss on stage. They were coming in for a kiss and something broke it apart. You know what I mean?
Right.
We never delve into sexuality on stage. In fact, we make a point of that because we do have children to come to our shows. So it's not like it's not like we're afraid of doing adult material. We will gladly do adult material of a psychological or horrific nature.
Okay.
We have no reason to move into sexuality on stage.
Yeah.
Our stories
Not
don't
about shock
demand
and
it.
awe.
Yeah. Our stories don't demand it. Edgar Allan Poe, right? No,
Right.
we don't need that. There's a sensuality to, Lenore. There's not an overt sexuality. So we try to stay very clear of that, And so, sexy, yes. Sensual in the meaning of the senses, absolutely.
Mhm.
Evocative, sure. Sexual, never. In fact, sometimes we come too close. Sometimes like some of our belly dancers may come a little too close. And so we say, you got to pull back a little. Yeah, we can't go there, or if it's a specific event, we might let them cross the line. Like we've done events for Fair Villa. They booked a belly dancer from us once. So it's like I said, okay, you can go here. You can't go here, but you could just slightly step over that line if you want.
Okay.
So we create those boundaries for ourselves, and we always keep them in check.
Well, this has been absolutely delightful, John.
Absolutely
Thank
wonderful.
you
And
so
I'm
much.
so grateful and so honored that you were willing to do this interview as John and not Byron.
Yes, I know. And let us dive into a little bit of John's
By
life.
chance.
I didn't know it was going to be on video. For some reason, I kept thinking it's a podcast that you're recording my voice.
Oh,
Yeah. Like most of them are.
Yeah.
Byron can come out at any time, darling, but not looking like this. So you are pretty much the only one I can think of, except maybe there might have been one or two in the early days before we knew what we were, before I was called Byron, before we actually had names that I might have done. But no, every single time we've done it, I've been dressed like Byron and the glass, everything. So there you go. You have a rarity.
well, thank you. I
you
feel
so
so
much.
special.
So fun. But thank you for having us. This is wonderful, on behalf of myself
Absolutely.
and the troupe, of course. Thank you so
Yes.
much. Thank
Yes.
you.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us here on Performance Anxiety.
Anxiety.
Where we drink tea and spill the tea and learn all the fun things. And we hope to see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.